Everyone is thinking about America's 250th these days, the semi-quincentennial. I've actually practiced that more than it appears. We'll all get better as we move towards the 4th of July. But everybody is thinking about America's 250th these days. Case in point, these plates that were sold at Walmart. Yeah, and you can see what people online are saying about them. They're saying, "We had a good run, America." At first, they might appear as a celebration, but then whenever you look a little closer, it kind of looks like a tombstone with a date of birth and a date of death. And I think that the upside-down American flag isn't really helping matters in this. We have our flaws, but I'm still hopeful for the future of this particular country, especially whenever we live into our stated values. That's why we're spending this month looking at some foundational American texts in light of our faith through a project called Faith 250. It's pastors and priests, it's rabbis and imams getting together, looking at foundational American texts, seeing what our faith has to say on the matter. So today, the foundational American text that we're going to look at is called the New Colossus, penned by Emma Lazarus in 1883. Raise your hand if you know the New Colossus. Everybody's an expert in this poem, right? Wow. 2, Gene, Marge, and Galen. Galen doesn't count. He gets a copy of my manuscript in advance, and so I know he did his homework. So I know by the author, you don't think that you know this poem. And I know by the title, you don't think you know this poem, but you know this poem. In fact, let me prove it to you. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor with twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. So let me ask again, who knows the New Colossus? Yes, you know the New Colossus, possibly not by name, possibly not by author, but you probably know it, if by nothing else, than by location. It's right there at the Statue of Liberty. Now, you might not know all of the lines of it, but the one that we all seem to latch onto and memorize is this one. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. This is the one that is invoked the most. This is the one that we continue to return to. Now, writing this poem in 1883, Emma Lazarus was asked to pen it as a fundraiser for the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. And she wrote this poem in 1883 as a protest to the Chinese Exclusion Act of the prior year, 1882. The Chinese Exclusion Act said that no Chinese immigrants were allowed to enter into the U.S., and any Chinese immigrants who already existed in the U.S. could not obtain citizenship. And so it was with that restrictive law in heart and mind that Emma Lazarus got out her pen and sought to write this poem that she called the New Colossus. And as a Jew herself, she knew what it was like to be persecuted based on nation, race, or religion. She knew well what the Chinese immigrants were experiencing at that particular moment in U.S. history nearly 150 years ago. Now, this has always been, long before Emma Lazarus penned the new Colossus, this has always been one of the stated values of our land, going back to our very first president, George Washington, said this: "The bosom of America is open to receive not only the opulent and respectable stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions, whom we shall welcome to a participation of all our rights and privileges, if by decency and propriety of conduct they appear to merit the enjoyment." Now, who gets to define decency and propriety is another message for a different day, but Washington knew from the very beginning that America was not for the opulent. America is not for the respectable, but rather America is for the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions. This is how our country was founded, before we even had a Statue of Liberty to put a poem onto. And even though we have not always lived up to this stated value, it has continued to be an important value for us, even into the collected lifetime of everyone who is, or just about everybody who is gathered here today. I think of the farewell address in 1989 of Ronald Reagan. He talks about America as a shining city upon a hill, an image that he has invoked many times throughout his presidency. Now, whenever he brings this up, he actually credits it to the puritanical writings from 1630 of John Winthrop, but you know that this is actually the Sermon on the Mount writings of Jesus as recorded by Matthew. But no matter the source, presidents of every persuasion have cited America as a shining city upon a hill. Now, in his farewell address, he brings this up as a chance to define exactly what he envisions whenever he calls America a shining city upon a hill, and he describes it like this: "I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here." A city with walls, but a city with doors nonetheless, in the words of Reagan. Long before the Statue of Liberty, long after the Statue of Liberty, this has continued to be a foundational value to us who call ourselves Americans. Now, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I do enjoy history, but I'm no expert. Look, I watch my Ken Burns, I read my John Meacham, but I'm no expert in history. If I were to claim any sort of expertise, dare I say, it might be more in the life and teachings of Jesus. So at the intersection of nation and of faith, Jesus says this in the reading that Ali brought to us earlier: "All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats." Now, in this, the line is kind of blurred between nations and people. Jesus will gather together people of every nation, and then he will separate people. Even though I think this is more of the judgment of people, if this is the criteria for the judgment of a Christian person, then logic would follow that this would also be the criteria for the judgment of a Christian nation as well. And here is the criteria that Jesus gives. He says, "I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. 6 criteria, but really 4 whenever you break them down. It's the poor and the prisoner. It's the sick, and it is the stranger. These are the 4 judgments by which we are to be judged. The poor and the prisoner, the sick and the stranger. This is how Jesus will conduct his final judgment. This right here is how Jesus will divide up the people. How do we care for the people who are poor and in prison? How do we care for the people who are sick and stranger? I've got good news and bad news. We've got lots of opportunity, which is the good news and the bad news, because we're number 1. America is number 1 in total population of both prisoners and also immigrants. So we've got lots of opportunities to care for the poor and the prisoner, the sick and the stranger. And he gives us just a little extra oomph of motivation for us as we do so, because he says, just as you did it for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. As if it's not enough for Jesus to simply say, take care of the poor and the prisoner, take care of the sick and the stranger. Jesus says, whenever you're doing it for them, you're actually doing it for me. For me. I'm the one who's showing up as the poor and the prisoner. I'm the one who's showing up as the sick and the stranger. You want to worship Jesus, right? Treat people well, especially those who are in need of our help. Those who are sick, those who are stranger, those who are poor, those who are prisoner. Treat them well. Jesus says, I am them. So if you want to worship me, then treat them just as well as you would like to be treated. We have an experience of our risen Savior, Jesus Christ, whenever we treat those 4 distinct classes of people well. So here's the good news. The good news is that Jesus puts it plainly, how to treat him well. Again, it's the poor, the prisoner, the sick, and the stranger. I haven't put in alliteration. You're going to remember this. The poor and the prisoner, the sick and the stranger. There will be a quiz after this. All right? So that's the good part. He tells us how to treat him well, the poor and the prisoner, the sick and the stranger. Unfortunately, he also tells us whenever he feels treated poorly. He says, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. That means that whenever we don't treat other people well, whenever we see a need and don't meet it, whenever we explain it away, whenever we make excuses, whenever we justify it, then we're actually not treating Jesus well. Most of us wouldn't show up into this place and badmouth him, but a lot of us don't have any problem with not treating people well, especially whenever they're poor and prisoner, sick and stranger. And just in case you needed any more motivation for doing this, the author of the letter to the Hebrews writes, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. You might say there are a lot of sick and stranger, poor and prisoner out there. How is Jesus showing up as all of these people? Well, I get there's one Jesus and God and Trinity sermon, and etc. But limitless number of angels, right? So the author of the letter of the Hebrews says that we might actually be caring for angels whenever we show hospitality to strangers. Look, I know that it would be so easy if angels showed up glowing with halos and white robes, with little hearts and big old wings. But that's simply not the reality. Cute, but not the reality. No, angels show up as those who are in desperate need of our help, desperate need of any welcome that we can provide to them. Yes, it would be so easy if they made themselves known, but They kind of are in how this passage puts it. Just look for those who are actually in need, treat them well, and you've actually treated angels well. And none of this should surprise us because, as the psalmist puts it, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. God's preference has always been, will always be, for those who actually realize that they need His help. So, it's good that we're talking about these things. After all, the wisdom of God is to speak up on behalf of the voiceless and for the rights of all who are vulnerable. Speak out in order to judge with righteousness and to defend the needy and the poor. So, what will you do? I know that now you know Emma Lazarus. I know that now you know the title, The New Colossus. Look, most people don't know Emma Lazarus. Most people don't know the title, The New Colossus. But they do know that we're supposed to welcome the tired, the poor, the huddled. So what will your legacy be? Will you speak out on behalf of the voiceless? Will you speak out in order to judge with righteousness? What will you do? Let's pray.